fun parlor game with supernatural undertones or a legitimate gateway to the afterlife? The Ouija board has been through ebbs and flows in its popularity, peaking with the Satanic Panic of 1980s America. However, it may surprise you to know that the history of Ouija predates this famed period by as much as a century. As such, there are a host of stories involving strange games that you may be unfamiliar with. Join us today as we dissect some of the most bone-chilling stories of hauntings and paranormal activity associated with the Ouija board. First, we will provide a brief guide to the Ouija for any viewers out there who may be unfamiliar with it. The origins reportedly date back to the 1880s in the US, when spiritualists are believed to have used a very similar board to this in their attempts to communicate with the afterlife, including the use of automatic writing. This then became marketed for mass production in 1890 on the premise that it was an innocent game to be played among friends and family, and not to be taken too seriously. The game retained a somewhat lighthearted association until the 1960s into the 1990s, when there was a rise in a more sinister association with the occult in America. Young men especially started to become attached to all things supernatural. The occult was now associated with crime, and as a result, certain imagery became synonymous with this so-called Satanic Panic, such as pentagrams and Ouija boards. This led to many stories of Ouija board users and debates about their truth. Today, we discuss some of these stories and see what truth may lie in these haunting cases. The true story of the exorcism of Roland Doe inspired one of the most successful horror films of all time. As such, it finds its rightful place on our list of the most haunting cases of the Ouija board. Promoted as based on a true story, The Exorcist became a cultural phenomenon. It was so horrifying that some viewers had extreme physical reactions while watching it at the theater. Although referred to as Roland Doe, the story is believed to be that of a 13-year-old boy called Ronald Hunkler. The events of Roland's life in 1940s Washington, D.C. mirrors some of the details of the Exorcist film, released decades later. Roland had a close relationship with his Aunt Harriet. Harriet was a spiritual medium who taught Roland how to use the Ouija board. It is unclear how serious Roland and Harriet took this dalliance. However, for Roland, things changed following Harriet's passing in the late 40s. Roland became haunted with scratching sounds and inexplicable water drips from the ceiling and pipes. As with the story told in The Exorcist, Roland's family sought the help of the church in relieving their child of supernatural possession. Following a seemingly failed exorcism in February of 1949, Roland was discovered to have red marks scratched into his skin, spelling out the word Lewis. This was thought to be done through a variation of automatic writing by the spirits inhabiting Roland. The message from beyond that appeared on Roland's skin prompted his family to take it as a sign to move the child to St. Louis in order to heal him. What followed was another exorcism and more communications being marked on his skin, with an X appearing on his chest. This was considered to represent the idea that there were 10 demons inside the child, X being the Roman numeral for 10. Roland's treatment continued to extreme measures, with doctors and priests working to rid him of his ailments. This treatment went on for months until he was finally cured. Was Roland a conduit for the afterlife, triggered by the passing of the woman who introduced him to the world of the occult? Did he take on the characteristics of the Ouija board, such as using his body for automatic writing? Our next entry again blurs the lines between reality and entertainment and exists in a world of uncertainty and speculation. What if we were to tell you that there is an entire novel written through the medium of Ouija? You may be surprised. Things would likely get more peculiar and uneasy if we told you that the novel in question was actually said to be written through communication with deceased writer Mark Twain. This is the story of the book Jap Heron, a novel written from the Ouija board. Medium Emily Grant Hutchings claimed that it was based on conversations between Hutchings and Twain 7 years after his death. Hutchings claimed to have communicated with Twain via the Ouija board. Twain's spirit was said to manipulate the planchette and spell out the entirety of the book, which would take roughly 2 years to transcribe. Reports state that when Twain reached from the beyond to speak to Hutchings, he referred to her as the Hannibal Girl, after her hometown of Hannibal, Missouri. This suggests that Twain was aware of who she was and was happy to relay his story. Due to the time in which it was released, the public took Hutchings' story at face value, and it was believed that Jap Heron was indeed a book written from the great beyond. Is this the work of haunting spirits, a marketing tactic, or something in between? Whatever the truth may be, Jap Heron is considered to be one of the most famous, potentially haunted texts of all time. Communities, folklore, and the internet alike are full of chilling stories of people experimenting with the Ouija board. For this story, we visit Fort Huachuca, a U.S. Army base in Arizona in 2009. The base is located approximately 40 miles from the infamous Tombstone, Arizona. As the story goes, a group of soldiers were entertaining themselves at the barracks, something that is no doubt common for soldiers on service. On one particular night, they were swapping ghost stories, and whilst at a local store, they picked up a Ouija board. 2 of the soldiers attempted to use the board but were unsuccessful. They thought that, while the base was very old, the particular barracks that they were in was newly constructed and may not be haunted. 3 soldiers at Fort Huachuca journeyed to Tombstone in search of a supernatural encounter. Having heard of a haunted house in the area, the soldiers took their Ouija board with them. At one point, the group split up to take toilet and cigarette breaks. One of the soldiers had entered a house to have a smoke, not thinking anything of where he was. He was touched on the shoulder, but when he looked around, nothing was there. Suitably alarmed by his experience, the soldier returned to the car and told the rest of the group. With the 3 soldiers now alarmed by the situation, they decided that this must be the famed haunted house that they had heard of, and decided to use the Ouija board to communicate with the spirits inside. The 3 soldiers then parked their car next to the house and opened their Ouija board. The first question they asked was simply, "Is there anyone there?" The planchette moved over, yes. They asked if this was the same spirit that touched the shoulder in the house. Again, the board confirmed. The third question asked by the men was, "Are you the ghost in the haunted house that we were going to visit?" This time, the board answered no. This was an unexpected and unsettling answer. The soldiers then took a more scientific approach, trying to remove any uncertainty from the situation. They asked the spirit what purpose the building had been used for and why it touched the soldier. The respective answers were slaughter and help, before confirming that the spirit died in 1867. The soldiers were then ordered back to base, interrupting their interaction with the spirit. However, they returned the next day, along with another soldier, to finish their communication. Again, they asked if there was anyone there, and the answer was yes. They asked if it was the same spirit as the night before. This time, the board answered no. This was not the answer that the soldiers wanted, so it demonstrates that they were not manipulating the board. When the soldiers asked the spirit what it wanted, it spelled out the name Stephen. This was the name of one of the soldiers present, and, going by their surnames, only one other soldier knew this detail, so it could not have been staged. The car lights began to flicker, and the soldiers became alarmed, deciding to end their contact with the spirit realm and promptly leave. There were 2 cars, each with 2 people. One successfully left Tombstone, only for the other to remain stranded when the car wouldn't start. One group contacted the others to explain the issues with their car. When the other 2 soldiers returned to try to pick up their friends, the driver exclaimed that he was no longer in control of the car. The passenger then took over control of the vehicle and managed to steady it. Was this complication with the drive a reaction brought on by the initial experience with the spirits at Tombstone? Or did the spirit manage to possess the car and further attack the soldiers? The soldiers remained convinced that they had experienced a haunting presence unexplained by natural order. Have you ever played with a Ouija board and lived to tell the tale? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you soon.